working to connect a region of over 600 cultural bridges between our lands.
Good evening, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching ASEAN in Focus on tonight's headlines. The U.S. and Australia expressed willingness to conduct joint maritime patrols in the West Philippine Sea, with the Philippines Defense Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. met with Australian Deputy Prime Minister and Defense Minister Richard Marles. Galvez Jr. met with Australian Philippine rescuers have confirmed 4 people died after the plane they were in crashed on an active volcano at the weekend. Health authorities said an 11-year-old girl in Cambodia has died from bird flu, the country's first fatality from the virus in years. With 2 deadly mass shootings fresh in people's minds and a persistent rise in pandemic-linked hate crimes, an increasing number of Americans of Asian descent are considering getting trained on how to use firearms to defend themselves. The United States and Australia expressed willingness to conduct joint maritime patrols in the West Philippine Sea with the Philippines. Now, recently, Defense Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr. met with Australian Deputy Prime Minister and Defense Minister Richard Marles. Let's listen in.
We reaffirm the need to continue working together towards a common goal of maintaining a free, open, and secure Indo-Pacific region. The Philippines also reiterated its appreciation to Australia for its consistent support to the 2016 Arbitral Tribunal Award, and at the same time, its continued support during the COVID-19 pandemic. In the region, where nations could freely exercise their sovereign rights while pursuing stability and prosperity in the Asia-Pacific and Indo-Pacific region. Building on the consensus between our defense departments to regularly meet through the establishment of a Defense Ministerial Meeting, or DMM, I look forward to the next meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister Marles in Australia. A homecoming for me, considering I really love Australia with my family. And explore joint patrols and joint trainings with friends and allied countries.
Today, I think Australia and the Philippines has a greater strategic alignment than we've had in any moment in our respective histories. Both countries are allies of the United States. Both countries have China as our largest trading partners. Both the Philippines and Australia are completely committed to a global rules-based order. It is deeply connected to our respective national interests that the rules of the road, as they apply in a body of water such as the South China Sea, the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, the freedom of navigation, freedom of overflight, all of these principles are completely central to our national interests and, as Charlie said, to our collective security. We're going to work together to look at ways in which we can deepen the opportunities where Filipino servicemen and women can work alongside Australian servicemen and women. And to that end, we're building upon the training which is occurring right now in Mindanao, but also looking at ways in which we can pursue joint patrols together in the South China Sea, and looking at ways in which we can do more exercises together. We are sending one of the largest contingents to exercise Balikatan in the coming months, and we look forward to the Philippines for the first time sending observers to exercise Talisman Sabre in Australia in August.
Now, to recall, a U.S. defense official underscored the commitment of the U.S. to support the lawful rights and operations of the Philippines in the West Philippine Sea. U.S. Defense Chief Lloyd Austin discussed with Galvez also on Wednesday several proposals to deepen cooperation and enhance shared security, including the resumption of joint operations in the South China Sea. Based on a handout provided by Pentagon Press Secretary Brigadier General Pat Ryder, Austin discussed with Galvez by phone developments in the West Philippine Sea, including the recent incident in which a Chinese Coast Guard vessel directed a military-grade laser at the crew of a Philippine Coast Guard ship off Ayungin Shoal. Austin reaffirmed the U.S. Defense Department's commitment to help bolster the Philippines' defense capabilities and capacity to resist coercion. Australia is the second country next to the U.S. with which the Philippines has a reciprocal visiting forces agreement signed in 2007. Just this week, the two countries kicked off their 6-week Army-to-Army exercise. Chinese Foreign Minister Qin Gang calls on countries in Asia Pacific not to take sides amid intensifying rivalries between major powers in the region. In Jakarta, the Chinese Foreign Minister chaired the fourth iteration of both nations' Joint Commission on Bilateral Cooperation, which was last held in Beijing in 2018. Again, let's listen in.
拜长女士讲，新冷战。 大国竞争不应该在我们的亚太地区出现，地区的国家不应该被迫选边站队。我们相信，印尼和东盟将本着本地区稳定、发展、繁荣的根本利益，独立自主的。 做出判断和选择，东盟战略自主，团结自强，维护东盟中心地位和包容区域架构，反对集团政治和阵营对抗。双方将继续推进“一带一路”倡议，同东盟印太展望对接合作。
bahwa ASEAN hendaknya tidak menjadi proksi bagi kekuatan manapun. Indonesia dan ASEAN sangat berkepentingan agar Asia Tenggara tetap menjadi kawasan yang damai stabil dan menjadikannya pusat pertumbuhan ekonomi. Saya sampaikan kepada Menlu Qin mengenai pentingnya implementasi ASEAN Outlook on the Indo-Pacific bagi ASEAN. Saya ulangi kembali beberapa elemen penting dari Outlook, antara lain menekankan pentingnya inklusivitas dan menekankan pentingnya kerjasama konkret yang saling menguntungkan.
Now, on Wednesday morning, the foreign minister also visited President Joko Widodo at the presidential palace in Jakarta, where the president conveyed the importance of Indonesia and China being the engine of peace and stability in the region, as economic development cannot be carried out without peace and stability, according to a statement from the palace. Ms. Retno, meanwhile, said both sides also discussed the plan to speed up negotiation of a COC between ASEAN and China, as Indonesia wants to see the South China Sea as a peaceful and stable sea. Philippine rescuers have confirmed 4 people died after the plane they were in crashed on an active volcano at the weekend, according to officials today. The victims, including 2 Australians, were on board the Cessna 340 that went missing Saturday morning shortly after taking off for Manila from Bicol International Airport in the central province of Albay, several kilometers from the Mayon volcano. Let's listen in.
Actually po, nasa retrieval operation na po kami. Nasa taas na po yung mga kukuha ng labi nung 4 na sakay ng aeroplano. Sana po may baba na po namin to mamayang hapon or mamayang gabi. Nandun pa sa taas, kukunin pa lang po. Pero may nakakita na po nito kahapon, pero wala po silang kapasidad na ibaba po yun dahil po 4 po yung pasahero, 4 po ang ibababa po natin. Kaya marami po ang pinakyat po natin kagabi para sunduin na po yung 4 na sakay ng aeroplano po. Doon sa pag-ugnayan sa pamilya na kamatay, yung kumpanya pong pinapasukan po nito, yung EDC. Po na lang po namin doon sa pamilya at sing kamag-anak. Ang gagawin po namin lahat na makakaya namin para maibaba na po natin to. Alam po namin ng nararamdaman ng mga pamilya. Kaya minamadali na rin po namin na may baba po sila. Na doon pa sa taas, kukunin pa lang po. Pero may nakakita na po nito kahapon, pero wala po silang kapasidad na ibaba po yun dahil po 4 po yung pasahero, 4 po ang ibababa po natin. Kaya marami po ang pinakyat po natin kagabi para sunduin na po yung 4 na sakay ng eroplano po.
The Civil Aviation Authority of the Philippines, or CAAP, said the plane's wreckage was on the western side of Mayon volcano, about 3,500 to 4,000 feet above sea level. It is a very difficult terrain, warning that the retrieval operation could take longer than a day. Manila-based Energy Development Corporation said previously that it owned the plane. The Australians were technical consultants for the renewable energy company. Now, to help address the soaring inflation, the Department of Agriculture confirmed it has hastened the importation process for sugar. In a press conference in Malacanang, Agriculture Undersecretary Domingo Panganiban said that he authorized 3 capable and accredited firms to push through with their importation. Take a look.
Well, in response to the directive of the President to address inflation and create a buffer stock, and given that sugar as one of the components of most commodities that drives the consistently high inflation rate, I acted with haste and interpreted the memorandum issued by the Office of the Executive Secretary as an approval to proceed with the importation. With the urgency of the situation, I instructed 3 capable and accredited companies to proceed with the importation of sugar, provided that they agree to reduce the prices of sugar, sell the commodity in a price that is commercially acceptable in the market, and that they will shoulder the cost of warehousing.
Panganiban said he selected from the list given to him 3 sugar importers whom he considers the most capable importers that they have. He also noted President Marcos was properly informed when the imported sugar was shipped to the country on February 9. Philippine lawmakers approved the country's entry into the world's biggest free trade bloc, with supporters arguing it will boost investment and jobs. In a statement on Wednesday, National Economic and Development Authority NEDA Secretary Arsenio Balisacan said the ratification of the RCEP brings the country closer to becoming a gateway to ASEAN. But detractors warned it could hurt farmers. And some economists also believe the impact may not be immediately felt. But NEDA Chief Arsenio Balisacan explains this.
It must be ratified. A lot of the future of this country, of our country, depends so much on our ability to attract investors, particularly foreign capital, because it's not enough. The domestic capital is not enough. Now, with regards to the potential or the allegation that the agricultural sector could be hurt, there's no truth to that, as I said earlier, because whether or not there is RCEP, we need to invest in agriculture. We need, kinakailangan natin ma-address yung mga concerns. Yung mga problema ngayon ng agriculture has nothing to do with RCEP. These are the problems were outcome of past neglects of the sector. No, hindi natin inalagaan yung sector for so many decades. So yung very low productivity of agriculture has nothing to do with RCEP. In fact, my view is that by adopting RCEP, we are ratifying RCEP, will be even more forced to pay attention to agriculture, because only then can you fully maximize the benefits that RCEP can give to us. Again, I want to mention to emphasize that we are not the only country asking or inviting others to come and invest into their country. Our neighbors, Indonesia, Vietnam, Thailand, they are all aggressively looking for the same investors, you know. And if you don't shape up, keep our investment climate, keep our rules of the game clearer, so that they are attracted to come in, then they will simply go to these other countries and will be left out. And I, as an economist, without those massive investments, you can't expect to generate high-quality jobs. That's plain and simple. The inflation is a short-term thing. The RCEP is it's a longer term. You know, when we say that we join RCEP, it does not mean that tomorrow we'll benefit already, or even next year you'll already get a full benefit. No. Yeah, realistically, when investors look at a country, they look at it, you know, and say, observe it for a couple of months, perhaps even years, and if they feel that they are safe with you, they come in. And even if they come in, for example, you want to invest a factory, a Nike factory, for example, it takes months before, even years, before that intention to invest to actual production. No? So hindi ganon, by that time, baka wala na yung inflation problem. Yung inflation is a current problem that may be 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. If we are lucky and are able to address our issues quickly, we should be able to see that inflation coming down by the mid of this year.
Now, to recall, President Marcos's administration and business leaders had lobbied the Senate to ratify the pact, citing benefits for local consumers, businesses, and the wider economy. The pact should help reduce costs and make life easier for companies by letting them export products anywhere within the bloc without meeting separate requirements for each country. It touches on intellectual property, but environmental protections and labor rights are not part of the deal. The Senate passed a resolution to ratify the treaty late Tuesday by a 20-1 vote with 1 abstention. The Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, or RCEP, is the most ambitious application of a rules-based trading system among economies in Asia. Let's find out more.
One of the benefits of the RCEP agreement is the reduction or elimination of import tariffs for products eligible for preferential tariff treatment, satisfying the rules of origin requirement. To know your product's import tariff, you first need to identify its tariff classification, or HS code. You can do this by either 1. Checking the Tariff Finder or FTA portal of the RCEP countries, or the new ASEAN Tariff Finder, which is expected to be launched in the near future. 2. Consulting with government issuing authority or tariff classification experts. Or 3. Getting an advance ruling. Let's take a look at an example. Carolina is from the Philippines and planning to import rear-view mirrors from Vietnam. Based on the tariff schedules, Carolina will be charged with 20% duties for the first 3 years. But Carolina can enjoy a cheaper tariff from year 3 onwards. It is worth noting that some countries in the RCEP have the same tariffs for products imported from any RCEP countries. These countries only have 1 tariff schedule for the other 14 countries. This means that if you are importing a product into these countries from any RCEP country, you will be charged the same tariff. Other countries charge different import tariffs depending on the product's origin. These countries have more than 1 tariff schedule. This means you may pay different tariffs if you are importing honey into Indonesia from China or from Thailand. On the other hand, Singapore has made commitments to bind its 0 tariffs under RCEP. If you are importing into any ASEAN member states, you should look at the schedules for ASEAN member states. Let's look at another example, where all goods and materials are eligible for the preferential rate under RCEP. Meet Grace, an entrepreneur based in Singapore producing packaged food. She imports mangoes from Thailand and sugar from China, processing them as dried mangoes to export to countries including Indonesia, Japan, and Cambodia. Since Singapore does not charge import duties, Grace can import the mangoes and sugar duty-free. But when exporting to Indonesia, Japan, and Cambodia, Grace's dried mangoes are subject to different tariffs. After finding the tariff classification for the product in these countries, Grace learns that her dried mangoes are subject to 20% import tariffs in Indonesia, 7% in Cambodia, and 0% in Japan. When importing into ASEP countries, always check the ASEP agreement and find out if and how you can enjoy reduced tariffs.
In tonight's other news, an 11-year-old girl in Cambodia has died from bird flu, the country's first fatality from the virus in years, according to health authorities. The girl in Cambodia fell ill on February 16 with a fever, cough, and sore throat, and then later died in hospital. Cambodia's Communicable Disease Control Department reported that it did not specify the time of death, but said the test results delivered on Wednesday confirmed that the girl, who was from Prey Veng province, was positive for H5N1, referring to the bird flu virus. The disease typically spreads from birds to humans through direct contact. The recent detection of the disease in a number of mammals, including foxes, otters, minks, sea lions, and even grizzly bears, has sparked concern that humans could be more at risk. The World Health Organization has called for vigilance, but has stressed that the risk to humans is low. Globally, there have been more than 450 fatal bird flu cases since 2003, according to the WHO. The Philippine government on Wednesday night denounced North Korea's test of an intercontinental ballistic missile, saying it undermined peace in the region and the world. In a statement, the Department of Foreign Affairs said the tests provoked tension as it reiterated the Philippines' call on North Korea to immediately put a stop to its missile launches and comply with UN Security Council resolutions. It also asked North Korea to engage South Korea through diplomacy and peaceful dialogue. The ICBM was fired off from Pyongyang into the sea about 200 kilometers west of Oshima Island in Japan on Saturday, and was followed by 2 short-range ballistic missile launches on Monday. The long-range ballistic missile test was North Korea's first ICBM launch since November 2022, or last year. With 2 deadly mass shootings fresh in people's minds and a persistent rise in pandemic-linked hate crimes, an increasing number of Americans of Asian descent are considering getting trained on how to use firearms to defend themselves. Asian Americans have traditionally been less likely to buy and carry guns, but there has been a shift, with gun shops now reporting more customers from minority backgrounds. Take a look.
Don't extend. All right, good. Take the magazine out. All right. 2 seconds. Come on. One, it's in a direct response to the hate crimes. There's been an absolutely, everyone knows, it's been reported, the increase in hate crimes the past 2 years because of the scapegoating of Asian folks because of the pandemic, right? And then 2, just a general sense of insecurity. There's been a huge increase in violent crimes, right? Random attacks. So people are concerned for their own, personal safety and their families. Unloaded gun, all time. Through my experience, anytime there's been a mass shooting, my business goes up. The interest in guns goes up. Because a lot of people feel like, I don't want to be vulnerable. I don't want to be like the only person that's vulnerable while someone's attacking me with a gun.
My dad ran away from Vietnam during the height of Vietnam War. There was a lot of violence that happening, and when he learned that I got a gun, he was ultimately very disappointed. It's like, oh, you didn't need this. We had the police on our side.
Yeah, there we go. What's it chambered in? Look here. 300
The bear. They chase the bear. The bear will run away.
Was that in
President Marcos shared a message for Japanese Emperor Naruhito as he celebrates his 63rd birthday on February 23. Take a look.
I wish abundant happiness and blessings to His Majesty the Emperor as he leads Japan to continued prosperity and the promotion of peace. Over the years, Japan has been many things to the Philippines. Japan has been a friend, a neighbor, a strategic partner. Japan has been one of our steadfast partners in the efforts to realize the Philippines' transformative agenda in infrastructure, in social inclusion, in defense, to name but a few.
Emperor Naruhito formally ascended to the chrysanthemum throne on May 1, 2019, following the abdication of his father Akihito. He is the 126th monarch, according to Japan's traditional order of succession. To recall, President Marcos had an imperial audience with the Japanese Emperor and Empress Masako during his trip to Japan earlier this month. He conveyed the affection and admiration of the Filipino people, including the estimated 300,000 Filipinos who consider Japan their second home. President Marcos also met with Prime Minister Kishida Fumio and discussed a broad range of cooperation, revealing just how responsive and robust the partnership has grown since they established diplomatic relations in 1956. As my usual habit, I'd like to end the day on a positive note. Let's encourage and build each other up so that no one is left behind. And that's it for tonight's broadcast. I'm Alma Angeles. Stay in the news because we live in extraordinary times. Good night.